Hi everybody and welcome to my studio. I hope you've come to paint something really fun today, something beautiful. It's just a color that everyone is excited about. I've had so many comments on this one when I posted it on Facebook that people just saying, that's my favorite color. Oh my gosh, I want to paint that, and it's so beautiful, and I am so appreciative because this was just another one of those things where I just drew something out and just grabbed some colors. I thought, oh, those colors will look great together. And it just happens to be my mother-in-law's favorite color. So let's take a look at it. Let me switch my lighting for this over. And this is my painting called Purple Beauty. Now I've painted it on a 9-inch paper mache box and added the daisies around the side. The inside's painted just a neutral pink color. And then this is a 6x6 wooden canvas. You can paint on a standard canvas if you like. I love painting on these wooden canvases. You know, you just hang them right on the wall. If they're deep, just hang them right up there. I love them. So this is what I'm painting this video on. The packet, which is available on my website, includes step-by-step written instructions, step-by-step color photos, and line drawing for the box here and for the single one. I have both line drawings on there, although you could just take one of the flowers and put on here. But I wasn't sure this flower was the exact same size as this one, so I thought I would just do it a little bit different. Plus I added extra leaves around this one here. So you can get that at lonnalamb.com if you want to paint along with me. You can use any flower design that you have, but we're going to have a good time with this one. And again, I'm going to be using Deco Art Americana acrylic paints on this project. And I am so ready to paint this for you because I am so ready for spring, and this makes me feel like spring is here. So let's grab our paints and supplies and let's get painting. Alright, before I begin painting on the surface, I've got prepped here. I just wanted to show you that I took this design and put it on a 9-inch paper mache box. Just added a little row of daisies here and a little bit of what we do to the background here I did down here. Just measured a strip that's about 3/4 of an inch right here. You could go as the same width as what the edge of the box is, and I just painted those black and just mixed a pink that I liked and painted the inside a pink color, but the inside can be any color that you want. So I just wanted to show you this is a 9-inch paper mache box that you can paint on one of those. But today I'm painting on a 6x6 wooden canvas. You can use a regular canvas. It's got the deep sides, and I probably will paint my edges black. I painted them originally the background color because I was going to keep this, take my background that I do here and take it over the edges, but I think I'm going to paint the whole edge of this black. We have a very limited palette here. We're going to be using Royal Purple, Deco Art Americana paints is what I will be using. Royal Purple, Lilac Meadow, Snow White, Lamp Black, Hauser Medium Green, Olive Green, and Plantation Pine. Not a lot of colors that we have to use for this project, so... And then you're just going to need whatever brushes that you like to use for painting. Now I've just hand drawn this in with a pencil. The design is a little bit different than this one. It's the same flower, but it's bigger. A little bit bigger, I think. Maybe not. And then I've added some extra leaves around this one since it's a single flower. But you can take the pattern from here and just put it, one of the flowers, probably this one since it's on top, and put it on your canvas. So if this one turns out to be a different size when I get done, then the packet will have both sizes for the pattern. And then again, you can get the packet at lonnalamb.com, which includes written step-by-step instructions, step-by-step color photos, and the line drawings. So we're going to start. I think I may just go ahead and paint my edges black. And I think I'll just quickly go off camera and do that. I'm just going to use a artist sponge and apply the paint onto the edges because I can put it on so quickly. That's how I base coated this, was with an artist sponge. And the background color is a mix of white with just a little bit of royal purple, just to make a very light purple for the background. So that is the background. I had already had this prepped for something and then decided to put this flower on it, so I don't have that in the video, but it is probably 95% white and maybe not even 5% of the royal purple. You just want a light purple. And so just mix it. Any value of purple is going to be fine because we use these colors in our design, so it will all work out great. Plus we're putting all this stuff in the background, all this kind of stuff in the background. So a lot of that purple will just kind of fade away. You'll end up not seeing a whole lot of that anyway. So don't stress out about the color mix. Just mix it and get a color that you like, a really light purple that you like. So I'm going to quickly go paint the edges black, and then we will start on this beautiful design. Okay, I thought I'd just come back and show you how I'm going to do this. So I've got a damp artist sponge. You can see this one's well worn and very stained. I dampened it, filled it with water, squeezed out the excess, put it in a paper towel, and made sure I got the excess moisture out of the sponge. And so now I'm just going to take it and just very quickly paint the edges. It will take 2 coats. I'm just letting the sponge glide across here. And once this is dry, then I will apply a second coat. But I wanted to show you how quickly you can paint your edges. And there I've got all 4 with black on it, so I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to apply a second coat of black, and then we'll get started on the top. Okay, my sides are dry, and you don't have to paint yours black. You can leave them the background color. You can paint them a dark purple to kind of go with the top, whatever you would like if you're doing something that has deep sides like this. If you're just doing a standard canvas, then you don't necessarily have to do that. I did want to mention, though, if you are painting on wood, to be sure and prep your wood first with multi-purpose sealer. Apply a coat of it with the sponge and let it dry, lightly sand, and then apply your paint. You can also mix this with your base coat paint, but then you'll need to apply 2 coats of your base coat, and you're good to go. This is an important step. I know some people think they need to skip this step. It's not important, but it is. There are 2, maybe 3 reasons why I use multi-purpose sealer. One is it prepares the wood. It seals the wood. Wood is very porous. The paint will soak into it. It could take like multiple layers if you don't use this. This seals the wood to keep the paint from sucking into the wood, from just keeps the wood from absorbing the paint and you know, needing to apply multiple layers. It also helps the paint adhere to the wood. So it's a very important step, whether you know, whatever kind of multi-purpose sealer that you want to use, it is an extremely important step to apply it to the surface, especially wood surface first. I apply it to glass. I apply it to almost everything that I paint on, paper, everything, because I want a nice sealed surface to let my paint stick to. Okay, now we're going to be doing the background, and trust me, the background is going to look ugly before it even remotely looks pretty. So just hang in there with the process, okay? If you have some of your extra background paint, I do not, so I might mix up a little bit real quick. And it's okay if mine is not exactly the color that I have here, because I don't have any mixed up left. I got some royal purple right there. It just needs to be close to that value. We're going to be painting all this stuff in, so we won't even see if it matches that color or not. So you don't have to worry too much about that. So I'm going to mix just a little bit of my background color. It takes just a tiny little bit of purple. You just want to sneak up on that, like if you were making a gray value and you have to sneak up with black, you want to sneak up on that purple as well. So I've got on my palette my plantation pine and my royal purple and my background mix. I may have gotten it a little dark now. Okay, that looks pretty close. That's for emergency purposes, if we need to adjust anything in our background. And trust me, when I was painting that box, I thought, oh, this background is not going to work. But once I got done with the layering process, it is a definite layering process in the background. So you'll want to use like some domed brushes. These are pretty soft. Or you can use some more flat filbert type brushes. These are still a medium softness. They're not stiff. You'll want to use some brushes like these. I'm going to use mine dry, but it's okay if you use them slightly damp. You just have to have the majority of the moisture wicked out of them. Drier is a little bit hard for the paint to come out of the brush, so I will probably dampen mine. I just brought out an assortment to show you, so I think I'm going to go with these flat ones, more filbert side type ones. I think in my original one it was a much bigger piece. I used these more domed ones. We're going to kind of work some paint in. I don't know, I might still stay with the domed ones. So I just want you to use whatever brush is going to be best for you. If you need to grab some paper and practice. So I've loaded this brush with water. I'm going to squeeze out all of the excess moisture out of this. I just want it slightly damp so that the paint releases from the bristles and not hold it in like when you're dry brushing. Okay, let's grab our first color, and we're going to go with some of this purple. It's pretty bold, so I'm going to fill my brush up with it. Maybe tap over here on a paper towel, and we're just going to start applying some of this into the background very lightly. It's okay if you go into your flower and your leaves. We want it to kind of overlap and kind of fade in around our flowers. I mean, we got so much stuff to do here that you don't have to worry too much about how it's looking at this moment. I'm going to load a little bit more. I'm really working it into that brush so it gets up into those bristles. Then I really want to take it off the tip of the brush, because when I lay it down, I don't want a whole bunch. And then I am using the lightest pressure. Kind of have my brush tilted on the side a little bit, and a soft, very soft circular motion going right into my leaves, right into my flowers. Bring this out a little bit. See, we're not going to see a whole lot of the background when we're done on this. We may not see any of the background by the time we're done. And see, I went straight down with that and left a little bit harder mark there, but that's okay. We got lots to go here. I'm going to reload, work it into the brush, take it off of the tip very softly. I'm going to come back at a little bit of an angle. So just half of the bristles are setting down on it. So you can see when I did that, it kind of flattened out one edge of it. And I'm just going around in circular, soft, circular motions. I'm going to flip my brush over and very, very gently, because the brush on the top side is still pretty wet, but I have quite a bit of paint on that side, so I might as well use it. And just continue around our flower, or flowers if you're doing a box. And we have lots of layers, so I would rather that you did light layers as opposed to really dark layers. We can come in and darken. We can lighten a bit too. That's why I made my background color. So if I need to back it off a little bit and come in a little bit lighter, we can certainly do that. All right, so I'm going to try and get as much of that purple out of my brush as possible, because we're going to go into our green. Now when the green mixes with the purple, it makes this really pretty color that I really like. Instead of having straight green, it makes like a dirty green color. Anytime that you feel like your brush is just too incredibly dry, you can re-dampen it with just a couple of drops of water. And I normally, let me do that right now, have water spritzed on the edge of my palette. When I need just a little drop of moisture, I can go right there and get it. Nice clean water. All right, so I've tapped that off. We're going to come in here with our green and start. We don't want to cover up all of our purple. We want to start adding a little bit of green in here. We're just making this scumbly, washed out background. And if you're doing a 6x6, it will not take you very long to accomplish this background. On the, if you're doing the paper mache box, it will take a little bit longer because it's a bigger area to cover. A little bit more green here, very lightly. I can give more pressure on my brush as I can tell how much paint is coming off. I'm going to go into the purple a little bit. We're going to come back with the purple. We're going to do a little bit of floating. But we're going to just continue to go back and forth with these two colors, this green and this purple, until we have built our background to where we really like it. Okay? Now you can use two completely separate brushes for this, or just stay with the one. I'm going to grab a tiny little drop of water and work that into my brush so my brush will release a little bit more paint. Alright, come back in here with some more purple. We're just going to go back and forth with these colors 2 or 3 times. Then we're going to float some color and see where we need to add some more of this background stuff. Because right now it's still looking just pretty rough and scattered, you know, just not smooth or anything, and it never will completely look smooth, but we'll get it to look a little bit smoother. I'm going back and forth, Royal Purple and Plantation Pine. We're going to go one more time with the Plantation Pine after we get done with this Royal Purple, and then we're going to float some color. I definitely want more green in here. Alright, I'm just going to work out the purple. Tiny drop of water and grab some green. Work that in. Remove excess. And then go in here and start adding some more green values. If you want it to be more of just the Plantation Pine and not the mix of the purple and green, then use 2 separate brushes to do this. I like it blending. I'm going to wash in some green probably in here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wash this brush out because all I have to do is wick out the excess moisture when I'm ready for it again. And so we're going to grab a brush for floating, whatever is your favorite floating brush. Let's use that. I like to use flat brushes, but I think I'm going to use an angle brush for this. Make sure you wake those bristles up your brush is damp, we're going to load one corner. And I can tell I didn't get enough moisture in my brush. So we're going to load one corner with the Royal Purple. I'm really working it in, get a nice soft color here on my brush. No thick paint, no hard lines. And we're just going to come in and float this color around our flowers and our leaves, or our flower petals, because we only have one flower on this one. And this is a pretty sheer color. And even if you get it a little bit darker than what I am doing right here, do not stress. We can back that off with some of our base coat color. And basically how we do that is just grab that brush again and take our background color and scrub some of that into the areas where we feel like it's too dark. We're going to be putting a little bit of white dry brushing on top of this, but right now we're just working on bringing the flower more forward. Grab a little bit of water. I really want to work that into my brush, so I'm really working it into just that corner of my brush, not letting it spread across my bristles. And again, it's okay if you go up onto your leaves and your petals. This will help everything transition very well, because we don't want it to look like we've just painted a line around everything. Right now that's kind of how it looks, but so there is our purple on there. We want to make sure this is dry. We're going to take some green now and create a little float washy color of that. So it's pretty sheer. I'm really working it into my brush with some water. Still only on that one side. And I'm just going to put some of this here and there and kind of wash it along. I'm going to want to darken up my purple, I can tell. This really is a super easy background if you try not to think too much about it. It's just putting some color in there. You got to realize that this is all going to fade into the background, so trying to get it to blend well or look good is only going to stress you out. This is all background clutter, so we don't want to think too much about it. We just want to get it on here and make it look nice. Okay, I'm going to take this brush, I'm going to keep the green on the toe. I think I'm going to put some purple on the heel, but I want them both to be kind of transparent. I don't want them to blend together on my brush. You can see I have two individual colors, so I can come in here with my purple and tap some of that around, and then come in with my green and tap some of that around, and start to blend these colors a little bit more. I don't want them to appear separate. So keeping them you know, on here where they, so purple's here, and then a little bit of green, and kind of smooth it and bounce it, and just, I'm very, very lightly putting these colors in here, so extremely light colors. I load my brush with water first. You can tap it onto your paper towel and get the excess out. And then just load your brush with the two colors and play around and have fun with it. See, I said we wouldn't see a lot of the background when we got done with this. Okay, I want to float around the flowers one more time, and this time I'm going to take my royal purple and a little bit of green and make that dirty purple color. A little bit of moisture. I'm going to mix a little bit more here because I want to have enough to go around the whole flower without mixing more. I mean, even if I mix more, that's perfectly fine because it doesn't have to be perfectly matched. I think I want a little bit more purple in there. Wipe that away with my finger. And I want a little bit more water. I want to thin that down a little bit. There we go. It should just go on, just flow off of your brush so easily. If you've got enough water in your brush. And then this is just kind of creating the shadow, finishing out the shadow here. So I'm going to show you what to do if you feel like you've gotten yours too dark. And then we're going to add a little dry brush of some white on top of here. And try not to judge your piece right now because those flowers in the middle are so bright and this is such a darker color out here. I don't want you to be stressed about how it's looking at the moment. Okay, right here I feel like I could bring a little bit more of that green. So I'm going to mix a little dirty green here. That's the green and the purple mixed together. And put a little bit of green in there. It's very sloppy, haphazard. Don't stress out. Okay, so if you feel like you've gotten just overly dark, and see mine's pretty dark. I'm loving it because I know I've got to dry brush a little bit of white on there, but I'm going to come back with my base color now. And I'm going to take a dry brush. Oh, that one feels like it's got a little bit of dried paint in it. Let's see if I can get it to work for me. It may not work, so I'll give it a shot though. I'm going to load it and then offload it. And then you just come in here and scrub some of this color in wherever you think you've gotten it a little too dark. Oh, harsh lines. Take your finger and soften back if you need to. And this will also help blend it a little bit into the background and not make it stand on top of the background quite so much. So you can already see over here, see the difference here and here. A little bit of light scrubbing. Not too much paint. So don't get carried away and completely cover up your background. It's going to be fine once we paint our flower in, and our little white filler flowers is going to cover most of this in the background anyway. And this is just background stuff. The background stuff is the hardest stuff for us to visually do, especially when it's layering colors, because we want everything to be so perfect. And trust me, I am one of those people as well. Okay, so I'm going to I wiped my brush off. I'm going to grab some white paint. I've still got a little bit of purple in there. And now I'm just going to put a little bit of white in here for a dry brush on here. And it's going to look great. Don't think it's not going to look great. It's going to be great. So it all pushes to the background. This is just a little bit of white, just kind of buffing it over and softening all those colors together. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I like that. That looks great. So we are done with our scruffy brushes. So now we're just going to do base coats. Base coats are easy peasy. Oops. So just grab a flat brush. Okay. We need Lilac Meadow. Let's see. We're going to do 2 coats of Lilac Meadow on all of our leaves. And this is where you don't have to worry about if you got paint on them, because we're going to cover them right up. Couldn't get my paint open. And then we're going to do 2 coats of Hauser Medium Green on all of our leaves. So this is just basic color book painting right here. You just use a brush that is works well for you, fits the area that you want to paint in. I'm going to grab a little bit different brush. I'm just going to go back to my angle brush here. I'm going to completely load my angle brush, but I've got that nice point so I can work the paint into those tighter areas and shape my leaves the way that I would like to have them shaped. And a couple of nice layers on here. Scrub that out where that paint started drying before I could change my brush out. And I did add extra leaves on this one, so as opposed to what I put on my box over there. On my box I just did 3 leaves around each flower. I want to make sure I go out into that purple just a little bit because I want to make sure I cover up if my graphite line is still there, which I just drew mine on with a pencil, but if it's still there, I want to make sure that it is covered up. So it's okay if you go into your background a little bit. I have to add a little bit of moisture to this paint. It seems very dry. So I'm just going to put the first coats on camera. And I'll quickly go off camera and put the second coats on. They are done the exact same way. Just nice. I prefer thinner layers. If I have to come back and add a third, I'm okay with that. But if you are someone who prefers thicker layers, you go for that. But thinner layers is what I like to use because I feel like I can get smoother coats that way. Need a little bit of moisture. Pick up a little dot of water and then work it into my brush so I don't have it all right on the end of the brush. Add a couple more leaves and then I'll paint a quick coat on my flower petals. I usually lay my paint like in the center of the petal, and then that's the paint I use to spread out into the rest of the area. So I'm laying the majority of it down into the leaf itself, and then okay, that's first coats on the leaves. See how the background is already pushing back and we haven't even gotten our second coat on or any details or anything. Okay, so the flower petals we're going to base in with Lilac Meadow. I'll spit it out here in a minute. So this is where you can reshape where the background color came over your petal. If your lines are still visible, you can see exactly where you need to go. And I just do them one at a time so I can retain exactly where that petal is, and I don't have to come back in and put any graphite lines back on here to show which petal is where, you know, like on top of another petal or something. And even with your second coat, you should still be able to see definition of petals. But if not, I would suggest putting your lines back on with a white ceramic lead pencil, because those will not get stuck in your paint. They will disappear with water or paint, so when you paint next to them or on them, they will disappear. And if you want, you can put the 2 coats on your leaves first, and then come in and put the 2 coats on your petals. Whatever is going to be working out best for you. Alright, this is what takes the longest, just getting the base coats in and all that stuff. Alright, I'll go off camera and get my second coats on, and we'll come back and start adding detail to this beautiful flower. Alright, I got all my second coats on everything. I've put my lines on here to where my petals are going to be folded, so we know where to shade. This is actually just slightly turned up petal there. I'm looking at my background and I feel like it needs a little bit more of the purple in it. So I'm going to create a wash. I'm going to wide angle out so you can see my palette here of this purple. You can see, oh, maybe you can't see. It's mostly water. It's just tinting some water is all I'm doing. Just tinting it with a little bit of purple. And I'm just going to wash some of this in. I feel like the background lost some of its purple in it. But if yours looks good, then you don't have to do this. So don't feel like you have to. So I think that looks a little bit better. A little bit slightly purple tint there. Okay. I don't want any pooling of water, so if I see any of that, I'm going to try and smooth it out. Okay, we're going to start working on the flowers now. We are going to mix our base color and our royal purple, so lilac metal and royal purple. We're going to do 2 royal purple, 1 lavender. So I'm going to dip into my royal purple, come out here, dip into it again, come out here, and that's removing the paint off of my brush, and then go into my lilac purple one time. Need moisture, and we're going to work that into our brush. This is for floating, and I don't want it super dark on my brush, so I'm going to continue to work water in to my brush and this paint until it is a nice soft paint. Almost a sheer paint, but not quite to a sheer paint. I'm going to touch my paper towel. That's going to get the most of it off of the tip of my brush. And then we're just going to come in here and start adding our first shading color around. And soften with a mop brush if you need to. Very gently blend that out. When you come into these V areas, you have to push the paint into that V. Push it in there with the tip or toe of your brush, corner of your brush, and so there's a nice big V there, but we want to round it out and make it look formed for this petal. And it doesn't have to be quite that dark in there, but I did it so that you could see it a little bit better. and just pat and smooth. So we're going to continue on around with this mix of color here. And this is our first shading color. And I'm going to go just a little bit underneath our turned edges and a little bit along the back edge of our turned edges. Okay, so along the back edge, I'm kind of up on the toe, just kind of gently putting it there. And the same here, I'm not laying my brush flat like I normally would. I'm staying up on the toe and just kind of scooting that paint into that shadow area right there. Okay, let me zoom in just a little bit. Up on the tip of my brush, kind of have it tilted up. I don't have very much paint on my brush. Then the water edge is just slightly damp, so I can blend that out. And we'll come along the outside edge as well. Small amount of paint on your brush. Your brush is almost dry, but it's still got a little bit of moisture in there so that you can gently blend it. And we'll come along that one there. And then let me mix a little bit more. 1, 2, 1. Work it into my brush with some water. Almost a sheer color. We got to put some at the center of these flowers or petals. And this is just that mix. 2 royal purple and 1 lilac meadow. And then I just take the water edge and blend it up slightly. I want a little bit out here on these edges. Take my water edge and smooth that out. No hard lines, just a little bit. I have such a small amount that I'm laying in there. Nothing wide, nothing dark, because I blended that water in my brush with my paint. I just got a small amount of paint in those areas. Okay, so that is our first shading. Pretty easy, huh? Pretty easy. Okay, so you want this to be dry. We're going to add our second layer on here, which is just royal purple. And you can pull this, you can repeat this one. As a matter of fact, I think I will repeat this color mix here. And maybe just go 1 to 1. Make it just slightly darker, a 1 to 1 mix. Now that is not in my instructions, so I may have to go back in and put that in. So that's not dark enough. I don't want it to be lighter than the color I just put on, but I do want to bring this up into my petal a little bit more. Grab me some water. Bring it up about 2/3 of the way when you're putting your first color in. So that's all I'm doing now, is just pulling that up a little bit higher. We'll be lightening all up in here, but for now we're just adding a little bit more of the shading color up in here. Water. Just doing that 2 to 1 mix here. I was going to make it 1 to 1, but that wasn't going to work out for the color value that I needed. So, and I just pity pat it up into there. Just you're just darkening up a little bit higher than what I originally did, because I had it too far down into the flower itself. Too far down to the center, because our center is going to come out quite a ways when we get it done. Okay. So now we can add our second shading, which is just royal purple. And we want to really work this into our brush. Let me get some more water. We really want to work this in to where it's almost sheer. We don't want thick, heavy paint going in here. We want nice, easy layers in here. So we're going to pull this up. We came up with that other one about 2/3. We're going to stay about 1/3 of the way with this one. That's not quite dark enough, so I'm definitely going to have to a little bit more paint and a little less water in my brush, I think. So I'm just going to add a little bit more paint to my brush. There we go. That's much better. So there's that V. I'm going to round it and bring it up a little ways. Take the water edge of my brush and soften that out. We definitely want where one flower is over the other to have that color, so we can start seeing a little bit of the shadows there. We're going to go around our folded edges in a minute. I want to get all the center areas done first. Even though I shaded all the way to that edge, it is going to become a light edge right there. And your second shading color should never come out as far as your first. So make sure it stays lower so you can have that value change in your flower. It needs to be darker in here. Still going to have to go a little bit darker, I think. You see, I'm just kind of patting it in. Take my finger and kind of soften and blend. So I think I got all of the... Should have counted them. They all look like they got the shading color, I believe. Yeah, I know I did that one. So I'm definitely going to have to go darker, but let's go into our folded areas. And I'm not going to do the full length of this one. Yeah, I might have to do most of it because I want to be able to tell that's... We'll come back and add our really dark value in there. And I'm probably going to go down to a smaller angle brush here in a minute. And we can put a little bit of this out here just in the very center. Well, don't really need too much of it on the turned edges. We don't want those to be super dark. But these places at the center, just right in the very middle, add a little bit of color in there. That darker color, that was the royal purple. Okay, let's add some lines in here before we start darkening anymore. So you want a detail liner brush, and we're going to take our royal purple and our a little bit, we'll just do our mix that we did with our first shading, which was 2 to 1. 2 royal purple, 1 lilac meadow, and that's not dark enough, so we're going to go straight royal purple here. There we go. And let's just inky consistency on your paint. Just use the very tip of the brush, and let's pull some lines in here. definitely need more water in my paint here. Much better. Has to be a nice flow consistency. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. So we're going to start on our highlights, and from there I know I'm going to have to darken the center, so I'm going to have to repeat the shading in the center with the royal purple. But for now we're going to start adding on some highlights. Alright, we're going to darken a little bit on the shading here. I'm going to add some black out on my palette. I can get my palette into shot here. So what I want to do is take my royal purple and I'm going to mix a little tiny bit of black in there. Just kind of sneak up on that black. We're going to make this a little bit richer purple color without turning it black. And we're going to go back over, maybe a little bit more black in there. Definitely need some water. A little bit darker. We're just going to keep this kind of down at the center, and we'll bring it in a couple of places, like maybe right there is the darkest shadow area along that edge. So we're going to keep this in the center mostly, because we're going to be adding our black in here in a little bit. So just pull it out just a little bit. Mix some more here. A little bit of water. Oh, that's a lot of black there. Okay, I think I got all the sides. I'm going to take some of this and go in a couple of, actually I think I'm going to go down to a smaller brush here, because that one's going to be a little bit too big for that. Just go right into this that I've made. And put a little bit of this in here. Make this a little darker. Couple places, give it a little bit more of a raised look. We definitely want it darker right here. This is the royal purple with a little bit of black, just making that purple a little bit more of a rich color. Okay, we also want to put this color, I want to make sure that we have our separations. And I'm going to put a little bit along here, because this is the one that's got a little bit of a highlight on it. Okay, let's start with some highlights. Our highlights are going to be a mix of the Lilac Meadow and Snow White. And it's just going to be an equal mix. So just dip one time into white, one time into Lilac Meadow, and blend them. Might add a little bit more white. I think I had more Lilac Meadow on my brush than I did white. Blend them out on your brush, and we're just going to come in here and start adding some of our highlight areas. So our first highlight, you know, will be the biggest one. So we'll bring that down a little bit. I'm going to chisel edge, come along this edge. So we can pull that edge of the petal on top. Go along this edge. Just up to our shadow here and our shading here and our shading there. We don't want to go any further than that. This one's just going to get a little bit right here. Let's see. I have to figure out which one of these petals is on top. I believe it's this one, so this is the one that we need to bring forward. And I might have to grab my round brush for this one. This one is going to be on top. Not worried about getting it into my leaves. We haven't put any color on those yet. So I'm just kind of walking it out into a triangle here. That water edge of my brush. Definitely need more water on my brush. Mix a little bit more here. I'm just doing all the outside edges first. So I'm just flipping the brush back and forth so that the paint always stays in the center, and then just kind of move it down the petal. I think I already did that one. Except I didn't do here. Or maybe I didn't do that edge because I think this is a different petal. So I definitely want to make sure I do this area right there. Need more water, mix a little more paint. This one I'm trying to see which one I haven't done yet because the color mix is very, even though when I put it on it looks pretty light, when it fades down in there it is just a little bit lighter than our actual base color. So I was having a little hard time seeing where my highlights were. Make sure I've got, we just want to make sure we've got all of the outer edges of each petal and the outer edge of all of our flipped areas, and anything that's on top we want to make sure that we've got that highlighted with that first highlight color. So before we move on and highlight a stronger color here, let's add some little lines in our flower like we did the dark ones. And I'm going to take the white, go into my clean water, and the purple, mostly white here. Way too much purple. Nice light color here on my detail liner. And then we're going to pull some of these lines in here. I like to always touch back with my finger to make sure nothing is going to be too bold on top here. And I'm trying not to go down into my shaded color down in there. See, that's a really bright one. Just some really thin strokes here. And a little tap back and soften them down. Okay, got a few highlights there. That looks really good. So now we're going to come in with a little bit brighter highlight, and we're going to go with Snow White. And we'll probably do Snow White a couple of times. So Just side load a brush, flat brush, angle brush, doesn't matter what kind of brush you use. And we'll start with some white. We're not going to cover as large of an area as we did with our previous highlight. A little bit on that edge. And we can come back and redo our shading underneath if we get over, like I just got over my line there, so I'll just plan on coming back with a little bit darker shading when we add our deep shading around our center. Side loading white. Soften it down with your finger. Don't really have to worry about if you get it in your leaf. That's not a huge concern right now. So I just put a little bit on there, took the water edge, which is the opposite side of the brush that has the paint on it, and softened that down. Trying to stay a little bit more on the edge of the turn places. I don't want it to go too far into the petal. Okay, I just want to make sure I've got all my areas. So what I'm going to do with what's left on the brush, which is not very much paint at all, I'm just going to tap it into the upper part of the petal and use the water edge of my brush and blend it out, kind of like a dry brushing, because there's not much paint on my brush, not much water on my brush either, so I'm able to just tap it and kind of blend it out into the petal and create a little bit of a highlight on there. And I'm just going to go around a couple times. I just want to use up what paint is left in my brush. Basically, if you've still got a lot of paint in your brush, you might want to wipe it off before you do that, just so you're not laying in a ton of paint at this point. So I'm going to have to come back in and clean this up, and of course I want just a little bit darker possibly under there. We'll see after we get some center in here. So let me grab a round brush or a filbert brush, doesn't really matter what kind of brush you grab. And we're going to dab our centers in. I'm looking for a bigger round brush here, one that I can just, okay, just grab some black paint, and we're just going to tap a center in here. About that big is all we need to start with. It will get bigger as we go along, but that's about how big we need to start it. So this is where we're going to take our purple and our black and make a really dark purple. And we'll be using this all the way around the center, because now that we know where our center is, more black needs to have more black tint to it than purple. Now that we know where our center is, we want to darken around the center so that we can start creating all of our little character for the center of our flower. So this is just pity pat float right here until you get it where you are happy with it, and that looks pretty good to me. I'm very happy with that. And then we need a small round brush, smaller round brush. And we're going to dab some black in here first. We're just going to go all the way around. You won't necessarily see the dabs that you put in the center because that's where we put that black paint, but we want to bring a bunch of this out and about around the center. And I might take that great big one off that I just put on there, right there. Damp brush, just remove that. Okay. Now I want to put some green out, some Hauser medium green. And we're going to dab some of this color in here. And it's okay if it blends with the black. So it's bringing it out from the center. Don't keep it too tight and controlled. Let some of it be loose and come out. Don't. Then I'm going to add some white in there. Just a few. I'm going to put them mostly in the center here. Maybe a couple pop out here and there, but not, we don't want a whole bunch coming out real far. Keeping them mostly in the center. So black first, Hauser medium green, then some white. I need that to dry a little bit. We're gonna shade around the center with some black, but I'm gonna go back and darken up some of my darker colors here. With a little bit of black and purple mix. Make sure everything's defined nicely. Just make sure we've got all those really nice shadows in place. Just a tiny bit of paint on my brush, not a lot. So don't get carried away and don't make your dark color like black. We don't want our flowers turning black. It should just be a really rich dark purple color. Purple off of my finger would be helpful. Doesn't help when you're smoothing something out and you're laying down purple paint. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So now we want to float some black around the center. Again, you want to keep this a nice sheer color, so blending it out with water on your brush is key. I've got way too much water, so I'm going to wipe onto my paper towel. And we're just making a nice sheer color. I'm going to get a little drop of water on the water edge. Do not make this too dark. You'll just turn everything black. We're just laying in a nice light wash around the center here that should blend in nicely with what we've already got. Should blend in with the center. And we'll darken everything around it beautifully. So, you know, that was mostly just a tinted watercolor, like a glaze of color. And I think that's looking pretty good. We're ready to move out to our leaves now. I think that flower looks really nice. You know, once we get everything done with the leaves, we can determine if we need to brighten up anywhere on our flower petals, but I think right now it's looking really good. The only thing I would probably want to come back in and do is maybe dry brush a little bit more of white into the open area of the flowers. But let's work on the leaves. So let's grab some plantation pine, and we're going to begin shading with this color. And let's separate our leaves first. Okay, and then we're going to go around our next to our petals. Put a little bit more paint and water in my brush so I can move it a little bit farther. Side load just the corner of your brush with that green. Go around your petals carefully. And I'm just going to move a little bit of that color up into the leaf. This first color we won't see a whole lot, and we'll probably repeat this color before we add our darker color. Oops. Just a tad bit too much water there. That's a V. Push it into the V and then pull it out and round it out. Give that some form right there. Your first float will probably be a little choppy as well, so don't stress about that, because everything will be smoothed out and look great when we're done. I'm going to pull that into the leaf just a little bit. I can always tell my first one because I generally have a little bit too much water in my brush in the first one, and I haven't built paint into my brush yet, so it's always a little bit lighter, so I always have to go back and do that one. But I think we're going to do this color twice just to get it smoothed out before we add any other colors or do any details in here. Now, if you have a certain way that you like to paint leaves, you just go right ahead and paint them that way. This is like a wild rose that I've painted here. Or it could be a made-up flower. You know, I don't know all that much about flowers, so you're probably looking at that going, that is not a rose. Okay, it's not a rose. In my mind, it's a wild rose, so that's what it's going to be for me, but it can be whatever you want it to be for you. A little bit more water. Light pressure when you're floating. You do not have to be rough and tough with your brush as you're doing this. Just light. Okay, there's our first layer. I'm going to wide angle up just a little bit because I'm sure I'm getting you completely off camera as I spin this around. Okay, I want to make sure this is dry, so I'm going to go start back over here. This one is dry. If it's cool to the touch, it's not dry, so be sure and check that before you move anywhere else. These over here are still very cool. These three are not, so I can concentrate on working on these three. So, make sure I'm in the right place. Here we go. This one here, I'm going to add another layer of this plantation pine and work it into the petal a little bit. And now you can really see how that's smoothed out and blended it out. I'm going to take my mop brush. Got a little bit of a line there from the tip of my brush. Don't like, and that's just a little piece of the mop brush, which I will brush away once it dries. If I do it now, I'll just remove the paint that I put on there. And when we're done with the leaves, if we get any on our leaves, we can go in and clean that up. But I'm doing my best to try and stay off of my leaves, or my petals. I want to be on my leaves. I don't want to be on my petals. Alright, we're just going to go all the way around. And work it up into the leaf a little bit. If you need to tap and smooth and blend, you can just very lightly with a dry mop brush. Clean your mop brush on a wet place on your paper towel and then dry it off on a dry place. And then it's good to go for you. I've got two more here for this second coat of plantation pine. Paint there. And then one more small little leaf here. And I think I'm going to grab a smaller angle brush to do the next step. We'll still be using this same color of paint. I'm going to grab a smaller angle brush. This one that I'm using now is a 1/2 inch. I'm going to go down to a 3/8 inch angle brush. So let me find a 3/8 inch one. You know how it is. You clean your brushes, you put them away, and then when you put them away, you can't never find the exact one that you want. Okay, finally found it. Goodness, that took me like forever. Okay, 3/8 inch. We're sticking with this same color, this plantation pine. So let's create our center veins. My leaves had plenty of time to dry. We're going to start at the back or the base of the leaf and grab a little more paint and pull the center vein. I'm not going to take it all the way to the tip. Okay, we're going to do this all the way around. Make sure you're coming from the center of the leaf. So the center of the leaf here for me, I'm seeing it come right here in my mind. Yours could be coming all the way back into there. It really depends on how you've painted them in. I don't really want it to be blunt. I want it to kind of disappear on the end as you get close to the tip. So use that water edge and make that disappear, okay? Okay, so we've got a center vein in all of them. Okay, so now we want to create some veins that come off of the side of those. Actually, I want this one to be up here a little bit. Okay, you can't see that one, so let me grab a little bit more paint. One down below it, just a float of color, a little line. It's gonna kind of fade away at the end as well. Okay, go on this side, and this, you may not see all of these because there would be one back here, but we won't see it because it's going to be so dark back there. Actually, those should be coming more down, not straight across, so I'll just remove those and paint them in again. Let's try it again. So if it helps, you can grab your pencil, and they should come angled down like this. Okay, not straight out like I had that one. So if it helps, you can draw some lines on your leaves. So this one would have one up here. We might see a little bit of it there. And you can just leave the center vein in your leaves if that is what you prefer. Okay, let me erase that. Lay my brush down before I get paint all over my clothes. Okay, so that probably is going to help you visually see that. So just grab I use a ceramic lead pencil, so just grab one of those, green or white, doesn't matter which color, and oops, wrong color. We want plantation pine, and I'm going to go on this side of all of my lines. So I'm going to load for a float. So I've just got paint on the corner of my brush, and I'm going to go along each one of these lines. And you go right next to it. If your line disappears, perfectly fine. We want those lines to go away. If you've drawn in with a graphite pencil or something and you get paint on it, you know, you'll just have to make sure that whatever colors that you're using with this color next, that you get that graphite line covered up, because once you get paint on graphite, it is set in your project. You cannot get it out. You can't do anything about it. And I think on my original one, I did shading on each side of the center vein to create a gap in the center, so I probably will come back and do that here in a minute. Ideally, you want to do it before you do these, but I completely forgot that step, so I will just add it in. So there would be one back here that we probably won't even know is there because you know, we still have to darken. We haven't put our darkest shadings in here yet. We're just shading underneath these veins right now. Creating them. Nice, easy little float here. Don't let it get too wide. Go to a smaller brush, flat brush, angle brush, whatever you're using. If it gets a little wide, take the water edge of your brush and clean that paint up. Smooth it out, thin it down. Okay, so you should be able to kind of tell that I painted all those lines in. I'm going to go in and erase all of my lines that I drew in there. That will definitely help you. I drew them in with a ceramic lead pencil, so it will disappear with paint or water, but I tried to paint just right up next to it so that it wouldn't disappear, so I could show you what it looks like once you erase your lines. If you've drawn in with a graphite pencil of some kind, then you want to make sure that you don't paint over it so you can go ahead and erase them. But anything you can't erase, you'll just have to paint over, okay? Alright, make sure your eraser shavings go away from your paint. Don't brush them into your palette. You won't be happy. Okay, so you can see now where the definition of my lines are. I'm going to go in and do the center vein here. And so I did it on one side. I want to do it on the other and leave a little bit of a gap and then kind of bring them together at the end. So you see it left an opening in the center there. And that's where I'm going to put my highlight. Now you don't have to do this. You can just leave it the way it is. This one we're not going to see a whole lot. But you want to make sure that you're going on the opposite side that you did your first float. You just want to see that little bit of division of color, nothing wide, just a little bit, and then they kind of come together at the tip there. Just takes a little bit of paint to create this. I have just a tiny little bit on the tip of my brush. So you see how that really created that center vein in there. Looks really good. Okay, let's start with our first highlight, I believe. Let me look at my instructions here. Okay, we're going to use olive green. Now, olive green is going to seem incredibly bright when you first put it on, but it is a color that I love on leaves because it fades down into the leaf beautifully, and I particularly love to use it with the color leaf green. Leaf green's probably my absolute favorite color because I just I love it's got a little bit of a blue tint to it, so it works good for any seasonal leaf that you're doing. I'm just side loading a little bit of olive green on here. So the first place I want to put it on all my leaves is on the tip, and see how bright that is? Yeah, I'm just going to kind of smooth it out. We're going to be doing some stuff on the edges, but for now we're just working on the tips. And this is going to fade in there. I've got water in my brush, so it's not straight paint. It's, you know, thinned down paint. But it's like we're looking at the flower kind of head on. So the tips will be, for me visually, a little bit brighter. See how it's already fading down in there? That's just gorgeous. Love it. Need a little bit of water here. We're just doing the tips. Keep it soft. Soften out those ends. We don't want any super hard lines anywhere. That one's a little bit hard on that one, but not super hard, so I think I can get by with it. My paint has water mixed in with it. Not a lot of water, but enough to keep it more fluid, where it won't, this one I must have had too much water because it's really faded down in there. Okay, so that's just the tips of the leaves. Okay, so now we're going to take a round brush or a flat brush, whatever you think will work best for you, is what I want you to use. I'm going to try this round brush. I'm not sure it's going to be big enough. So I want to load my brush with the olive green. I'm going to load it, maybe just a tiny drop of water in there. Make it a little more fluid. Doesn't have to be fluid. And then I definitely want the excess moisture out of my brush, so touch my paper towel, and then I'm going to reload it because I had a ton of water in my brush. I'm just going to flick off a little bit here because I want to do a dragging. Flick off a little bit more. A dragging motion in between my veins. Just kind of a dry brushing. Load, tap off. I'm just using the tips of the brush. I'm not laying my brush down, just letting the bristles tickle across there a little bit. Just a little tickle across there. We're going to highlight on the outer edges here in a minute. We still have our darkest shading to do as well, and then we're also going to add some purple into our leaves. You're just dry brushing. Now I'm dry brushing with a damp brush. And you can dry brush or dry rub with a dry brush. But this particular technique that I'm doing works best with a slightly damp brush. And just tickling the tips of the brush across. If you feel like you get too much in here, go back with your base color and kind of dry brush some of that in there. This is where I might need a little bit bigger brush to cover a little bit bigger area. So it looks like it's all one stroke instead of 3 or 4. And one more small one. Okay, there we have our first highlight on there. How fun. Fun, 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 fun. Loving, loving, loving this. All right, let's take our detail liner and thin some of that down. We want inky consistency with this olive green. And we're going to pull some down our center vein. And on all of our side veins, we'll go to the back side of it, closest to the base, and just do kind of a line down beside each one of those. You might see a little peek of one here. Down the center, you need a nice fine detail brush. And then be a little neater than me. I'm being extremely messy here. And again, this is a step you can leave off. You know, if you don't want this much detail in your leaves, you can just do some shading and highlighting and washing in of some color, and they will be gorgeous. You do not have to do all of the detail that I'm doing. So just work at what is comfortable for you. Back side of every one of our shaded places. And don't worry if you don't get directly on your side veins. Not an issue. Anything that gets too bright, touch back with your finger. We're going to darken our shading here in a minute, and then wash some color in. We don't ever want any hard lines coming on here, so soften them back with your finger. Okay, we'll do a brighter highlight on here in just a minute. So we'll keep this detail liner handy because we're going to need it for a little bit of brightness. So I'm going to take some of my, let me redampen my angle brush here, my olive green and a little bit of white, probably an equal mix. Let's see what my, yeah, just mix those two together. We just want to brighten that olive green just a little bit. And then we'll just go back over smaller areas of our highlights. I'm going to do all the tips first. Just the very tippy tippies of these. Okay, can't really tell if I did these two or not. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So I did just the tips of them. I'm going to come along the edge of the leaf with the olive green. So we're going to come along just in our areas where we put a little bit of highlight. And again, this is a step you can omit. This is going to be, this will fade down in here, so it won't be super bright. And then we're going to dry brush a little bit of that lighter mix, that white and olive green. Can't tell where I've been. This is just olive green, just in those sections along the edge, or everywhere along the edge, as I appeared to have done just right there. Definitely need more water so I can do a float instead of a draggy thing. Okay, I think I've gone all the way around it. I need to fix this side because that's really bugging me. Okay, so let's do a little bit brighter highlight on here with our round brush. And we're going to do the olive green and white mix. So it's just an equal mix. Mix them together right on your round brush. And I'm really going to wipe the paint off now. And just a little scooch of this onto your highlight areas. We still have our darkest highlight to go, and that was pretty bright there. Just tickle some across there. Just a little draggy stuff. A little kiss on there. Okay. That looks pretty good. And then our detail liner, we're going to take that white and olive green mix. And let me mix a little more here. Probably just a tiny bit more. Well, no, that was an equal mix. We did just olive green a little while ago. So we're going to put this just in the center. And then if you want in the center, if you did the veins out here, you can put some in the center, or you can just put it in the center here, the center vein. By the time we get our shading on here, our darkest shading, which we have not added yet, just in the center. Okay, I am going to do a few of my side veins. Okay, I think that's probably good enough. Can't tell if I did this one or not. Really hard to say. Okay, that's really good enough. Okay, let's do our darkest shading on our leaves. And go to my 3/8 inch angle brush. And so we're going to use black. Let me put some fresh black out here, and some plantation pine. Get some fresh of that out as well. And we'll need royal purple. So if you don't have any fresh royal purple out, you might want to do that. So we're going to mix our black and our green to make a really dark green. And we're going to float this right next to all of our flower petals. really dark green. I mean, you could just grab a black green because it is like a black green, but you got the colors right there. Just mix them. If you know what black green looks like, you can certainly mix a black green. That definitely needs to come out a little bit farther. All right. Use a good brush when you're going around your petals. I hope I'm keeping this on camera for you because I keep having to lift it up so I can see. So it's not so glary for me. Oops. Paint a little bit too far on my brush there, so I just wiped it out. Very dark green. Almost looks black because it's such a dark green. Okay, one more. And I want these to dry a little bit because I'm going to put a little bit of this next to the center vein before we add some purple on here. Okay. So that really helped push those a little bit deeper underneath our rose. Now we're going to put some along the center vein. And again, any of these steps that you want to omit, you can. A little bit more paint here. I have just a tiny bit of paint on my brush. I want to darken up next to the center vein, just in the center. This is that same mix of black and plantation pine. Super dark, almost black green. Okay. And then a little bit on these if you want. This is another optional step. The more you do, the more realistic you can make things look. And it's just a small area. Should take you no time at all. Oops. I want to cover up my highlight there. It's just a tiny little bit, just kind of in the center. Now, at any point, if you feel like your leaves are just incredibly bright, you can wash over them with some plantation pine. Still have our purple to put on. So I'll show you what it looks like when you wash over it with plantation pine. At this point, you could leave your leaves like this if you like them more bright. So I'm going to create a wash of plantation pine, water, just tinted water, that's all we're doing. And then you can wash over your leaves, the entire leaf, and that will tone them down just slightly because plantation pine is a transparent color, so it will take the color down. If you want it a little bit more of a dirty color green, add just a tiny bit of royal purple in there and it will make it an even dirtier green. And that you can wash over your leaves. I'm just going to do them all since I did that one. I don't want it to be, I want it to all be cohesive. So I'm going to wash over all of them with the plantation pine and a little royal purple mixed together with water. And you can do this a couple of times. I'm just doing light layers here, nothing really thick. So these three haven't been done yet. And that one doesn't look like it got much color on it. Let me mix some more together here. We still have a wash of purple that we're going to put on here. This one has a little bit more purple in with the green. I kind of like it a little bit better. Now this will dry pretty quickly. I want to put a little bit more of the purpley green mix. A little bit more purple in the mix, I think. So I'm just going to grab a little bit more purple and mix in there. So it's a little bit more of a purpley green. I like that a lot. So I'm going to put that over my leaves. Again, this is optional if your leaves look exactly how you want them to look. And I'm not really sure which ones I've done, which ones I haven't, so I'll just go over them all again. And this tones them down just a little bit, but still keeps those highlights on there, which I love. Mix a little bit more. This is a watery mix. And you can put this wash over them as many times as you would like, until you've got them toned down as much as you would like them to be. And I'm thinking that's looking pretty good right there. Make sure I get all the way out to my outer edges. I don't want to leave anything without the wash on it. Okay, now it needs to dry. So if you've got a dryer, just quickly dry it. We want to wash a little purple on there. And then we have our little filler flowers to do. Okay, so the royal purple is what we're going to use. So I'm going to side load some royal purple. And then just decide where you would like to have this color on your leaves and kind of put some on there. Soften it back with your brush. It's not straight paint. I've got a little bit of water in there so we can keep it a more transparent color. That way we can come back and apply another coat on here. And you can put it in more than one place on your leaf. Let me get some more water. And then just work your way around your leaves and you decide where you want to put this color. Can be in more than one place. And that will definitely have to be a little bit darker there. You can do some, do them all, whatever. Okay, once it starts to settle down in there, then you can decide where you would like to, about putting a second layer on. So I already know I want a second layer. So a little bit of a wash of this color, and the second layer will really brighten up that purple. And there you go. You can leave it just like that. You don't have to do anything more to it if you don't want to. I kind of feel like I need a little bit more of the royal purple in the center of my flower. I feel like it could be just a little bit darker in here. So I'm creating just a little bit of a wash, and I'm going to go around the centers. It's not going to affect that black that we got in there, so just feel like it needs a little bit more of that purple color in there. Don't have much on my brush, so don't get carried away. Okay, take a look at it, see if it needs anything else. It's looking pretty good. I do feel like I need to bring my little green dabbies out a little bit. When I put that black on there, I feel like I lost those. Now my center feels very, very tight. And so I'm going to bring a few little stuff out this way. Mix it up. Don't keep it just like in a little row. Don't confine everything. You know, bring a couple out this way, a couple out this way. Maybe not that far. And then I'll get some white and add a few more bright ones in there. I need to bring the white ones out just a little bit. That way we can see some light reflected on some of these out here. Again, don't be confining. Don't keep it tight. Don't put them all in a row like little soldiers. Bring it out. I'm going to cover up a little bit of that green there. That's a very big green dot there. And I think that looks pretty good. So now we're ready to do our filler flowers. That's the last thing on this. And they're just little white daisy-like flowers. So they're really easy. You do not even need a pattern for them. You just need a small round brush and some white paint, and then just determine where you want to put some of your flowers. Straighten that edge up a little bit. Okay, so a damp round brush. I've got I think a size 2. Load it with some white paint. And then you're going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long strokes, and then 2 or 3 dashes to finish it off. So I'm going to put one here, maybe. Oh, that's a fat one. Maybe a fat one right there. That is a super fat one. So if you do that and you don't like it, just remove it with a damp brush. You can also varnish this before you start adding these little flowers, and that way if you don't like them or you mess one up, it comes off super easy with a baby wipe. Alright, let me try that again. There we go, that's a little bit better. Need some water in my paint here, because my stroke should be a little bit longer. And you decide where you want them. Totally up to you. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, and 2 strokes. Let's see where I want to go here. There are literally just little dabs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And just keep an eye on your project and, you know, see if you need to add more. And how many more? I mean, totally up to you. Let's see, I think I need a couple over here. You can see I'm leaving an area open in the middle of them so they're not coming together real tight. Okay, let's add another one in here. Let's go over here. Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. Again, you can add as many of these as you want. I'm going to grab my detail liner. I'm going to take some of my Hauser medium green and my plantation pine and mix it together to inky consistency so I can give the illusion of some stems. Ooh, water. Don't want water. Really thin. Make these thin. Don't let them get super thick. Super thin. Some of them we won't see the stems at all, so you don't have to worry too much about them. Like these, we won't see those stems. Won't really see that one because of where it's at. This one I could use a little bit of lighter green so we could see it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my round brush. We're going to tap in the centers. A little bit of plantation pine and Hauser green both on my brush. And we're just going to tap them in here. A little bit too much plantation pine there. Plantation pine is transparent, so make sure you got enough Hauser green in your mix, Hauser medium green, so that your centers are opaque. Just tapping right there in the center of all these flowers. And some of them might have a bigger center than others. Okay, so that's the centers. So I'm going to take my olive green and my liner brush and get a little bit of olive green and just tap a couple, 2 or 3 little dots of a highlight on here. You don't have to add a lot of detail to these little flowers. I mean, you really could go to town and do shading on them and all that stuff, but since they're just little filler flowers, and you can make any kind of filler flowers that you want, they're just little filler flowers, so they do not need a lot of detail. And so at this point, once you've got your first little filler flowers in, if you feel like you want more filler flowers, see, like I feel like I could use a little more, maybe a couple more over here and maybe one over here. This is where you would go in and add more. So I'm going to add some more over here, and I want them to be turning different directions. I don't want them all the same. So I think I want one maybe out here. And then I feel like the space is pretty open, which is okay, it can be open, but I'm thinking I want to add some flowers in here. Maybe another one out here, or right here. I'm going to try and go for odd numbers. It's a little bit more appealing. I feel like I need another one right here. And I'm trying to decide if I want any more. I like to look at it at all angles, all directions, and see what I'm thinking. I'm thinking right here, because I just feel like that's too much of an open space there. Okay. I think when I finish those off, that will be pretty good. So let me get my stems in. Really thin. Oops. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good here. So let me finish tapping those in, the centers, and put a little highlight on them. And I think we'll be calling this project done. You can do any kind of filler flowers. These are just super crazy easy flowers. So okay, I just want to make sure I haven't missed any. And then I'll come in with that little highlight of some olive green. I can tell which ones I've done here. Okay, I think that's got them all. And I think I'm going to call this one done. I really like those filler flowers, just add so much fun to this painting. I think it is just beautiful. And you can do as many flowers as you would like. So 2, 3, let me wide angle. Oh, goodness. Wide angle out. And my buttons didn't want to work. Get everything out of the camera shot here so we can get these two things in the camera shot. And there we go. They look beautiful. I love them both. Gorgeous. So because I washed over these leaves, they're a little bit more muted than these leaves, but you can always come back in and add a little bit of that olive green highlight. I like the darker leaves here. It really pushes them way back, but I also like them here. I feel like, you know, they're both just beautiful. So I hope you've had a great time doing this. There's the side of this, and then on the side of the box I just drew a line with my compass and did a row of the daisies that we put on top, the little daisy filler flowers with a couple little dabs for leaves. Just dabbed the same way that I did the flower petals with some green, the mix of Hauser medium green and plantation pine, and just did a row of that across around the entire box, kind of bring it all together. So there you go, 6x6 canvas or wood canvas. This is a wooden canvas, or a 9-inch paper mache box. that's what I've done here for you. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. Please leave me some feedback, some comments, like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm going to get busy making some more videos so I can bring you some more. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.